Hey, welcome back to Divergent States. I'm Elite, your host, back with Brian. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, dude?
Good, man. So tonight, guys, season one premiere or season two premiere is Shane Mauss. How you doing, man?
I'm really good. I'm excited to be the season premiere.
Right, dude. I was so excited when I got a hold of it. It's like, man, it'd be great to have like Shane on just to kind of open season two up. And here you are, man. How you been?
Such a good choice.
Right.
I've been good. I've been busy, wrapped touring for the year, and working on some new shows for next year, and have a special coming out. I was hoping to know the release dates by now, but I'll know them in early January. It'll probably come out like end of February and March. That's a
Dude,
2-part special.
dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I watched your the Psychonauts special that the movie. Just kind of just refamiliarize myself, and I was like, holy shit, it was great to see like all the people you had on. Just like, oh, there's Rick
Mm-hmm.
Dublin, there's Dennis McKenna. Like, oh, I know these
Yeah,
guys. It's great.
2017 was a really special time too, and
Right.
that was a really special gathering back when it was still kind of like small indie, a lot of fire behind it, and the psychedelic space has changed quite a bit since that time.
Right.
But that was really exciting.
Yeah, it's been about 10 years now, almost.
Just about,
Don't
just
remind
about,
me.
yeah, 8 years, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, don't remind me. Get off my lawn.
I know.
Tell you what. Well, guys, we're gonna take a quick music break with Drip. You guys don't forget join on Patreon. We've got extended conversations, early access. You guys help us keep the lights on that way. Also, we were chosen as the Zendo Zendo projects ambassadors. So you guys join, you get 10% off using our code Divergent ST10 or Divergent S10, I think it is, and you get 10% off the Zendo Project Set program. Help us out too a little bit. So again, we're going to listen to Drip. You guys check them out on SoundCloud, Spotify, wherever you got it, and we're going to get back with Shane. Hey guys, welcome back. We're back with Shane Mauss. Man, great to have you here. Season two premiere.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of chatting over. We kind of touched on in the intro going over your early specials and everything. But when you think about those, what were you trying to figure anything out on stage?
Well, so I caught breaks early on in my career. I was like one of the last comics to catch breaks through late night. I had won a award, got a fancy Hollywood, agent manager, got to be on late night. And late night doesn't really move the needle for anyone like it used to. So this was like 2007. So this was like this was like the last time YouTube was brand new, and I was one of the last people where it's like, oh, you did late night, you can now go and be a full-time touring comedian, and so I kind of accomplished my childhood. My childhood dream was to be a stand-up comedian, and by 2010, I kind of had accomplished what I set out to do, and was feeling a little unsatisfied with conventional stand-up. And I had started. I was always kind of reading science books as a hobby. I hated school, and but I liked learning about the universe and evolution and how we came to be. And so I started reaching out to scientists and started a science podcast. Here we are, which I'm firing back up next year. Had a couple year break to put this tour together, and I started doing science themed shows. I did a special on Netflix called Mating Season way back in like 2012 or something like that. And I wasn't really happy with it. It was my first time kind of doing a big cerebral um, show, but I had like really dumbed it down quite a bit to make it work on the road. And then I had this album, My Big Break, that was about breaking my feet and about the evolutionary underpinnings of negative emotions and depression and anxiety, and why, even though none of us want to experience pain, why it's a useful thing to have evolutionarily. And that's when things started clicking into place, mixing science and comedy together. And in promoting that, I happened to talk about um, ayahuasca and DMT on Pete Holmes' podcast, You Made It Weird. And I didn't know that there was a psychedelic. I'd always dreamed of one day putting together a show about psychedelics, but I didn't think it was a viable thing unless I was like to become like the biggest comic out there that could just talk about whatever. That's what I thought was going to happen. That's certainly not where I was at. And so, I started doing little indie shows and a weekend working at a club, slinging dick jokes to drunks, and then I would go and do a psychedelic show somewhere, and the audiences were so fun. They were so much more interested in ideas and information than your average audience. And I just really took to that. And so that was my first time really developing a full, like 90-minute solo show that's like a lot more heavy on information and some history and some big concepts and ideas with mixing jokes in. And so that's where the psychedelic thing started. And I do other like science. I have several different science themed shows that I'm launching next year. But that was these specials are kind of proof of concepts for me. The specials have there was 20 different artists involved in making visuals for the show, and there was a VJ that blended everything in real time. So yeah, I did this Vegas residency at Area 15, and so it was a way of bringing what I was saying to life visually, and I'm interacting with the visuals and things in real time, and so like the art's like already made. He would know like kind of the things I talked about, but then he had a 25-year catalog of stuff from working with bands, so I could riff and we would I would stop and comment on some of the things that he was. So it was really like a two-person performance. So I kind of created a show unlike anything that anyone's ever done before, and I'm hoping these specials work as a proof of concept so that I can do other shows in that style. I have a show about called Myth Understandings that I put together for IMAX, and we have a planetarium and dome version that I'm hoping to do more next year. But the idea of bringing in a visual element to bring to life some big ideas and get to explore more cerebral concepts than a regular stand-up comedy show can is something that is kind of my mission, and it's really challenging and often frustrating. And the psychedelic space has been kind to me in that regard.
Yeah, I'm kind of envisioning it in my head, like as you're talking with the different lights, and you ever gone to like a Dead and Company show, and you see their backgrounds and stuff and what they're going on there. It's kind of what I'm envisioning.
Yeah, I saw them at the Sphere actually getting
Oh,
ideas for
nice.
the Dome show. That
We'll be right back.
Hey, if you're new here, welcome. I'm glad you found the show, even if it was by accident or through a specific guest. Most people land here because someone they follow, a researcher, a therapist, a chemist, or one of the weird mystic types, said yes to a conversation. And that's great. But the real value is everything that happens after that first episode. So, very quickly, here's what you walked into. This is Divergent States. We explore psychedelics, culture, underground practice, science, and the outer edges of consciousness without pretending to have all the answers. There's no gurus, no marketing department, no script from a sponsor telling us what topics are safe to talk about. Just honest conversations. Over the past year, I've been able to build real access into the world. People most of us would never really get close to otherwise. And I'm trying not to keep that access to just myself. If you want to join the Patreon, you can submit questions for upcoming guests. I read them. I bring the good ones straight into the interview. So if there's anything you've always wanted to ask about psychedelic therapy, spiritual emergence, shadow work, chemistry, law, whatever, that's how you can get your voice into the room. Now, if you're wondering where to go next, I'll make it easy. After this episode, check out our conversations with William Leonard Picard, Rick Doblin, Hamilton Morris, or just check out the 7 Principles of a Psychonaut episode. Those 4 will give you a real sense of the range here: underground, academic, personal, and philosophical. And if you'd like to be a part of shaping where this goes, or if you just want the extended segments that don't really always make it into the public feed, join the Patreon. That support is literally what keeps this show independent and honest. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Take your time, explore the catalog, let curiosity be your guide. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
that I'm putting together, and yeah, there's a lot that you can do, and it's fun. Fortunately, my VJ has been in the business for 25 years. His first VJ set was a birthday party that he threw himself when he was like 21 or something like that, and he taped together VHS tapes to create and blend the visuals and played it in a player through. And so he's been using all these different tools through for the last over 2 decades. And so, and he has a psychology degree and a good sense of humor. And so we just really work well together. And I don't always do that with my shows, but that's the stuff that I'm the most excited about.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds awesome. I mean, like, I can't wait to see it, but it kind of reminds me, early on, we're going back to what you were talking about earlier. Early on, I did notice watching one of your earlier ones that I think you made like one mushroom joke in there, like at the end, and then we go in a couple of years. And so how did that develop for you? Was it kind of just like like you said, an offstage thing that just brought it to life? Or was it just, like you said, something that was there, you were wanting to get out?
I mean, mushroom definitely. It's a mix of things. So I had my first mushroom experience when I was 16, and absolutely fell in love with psychedelics, and would try to get my hands on any psychedelic that I could. You couldn't just walk into a head shop when I was a
Right.
teenager, and so I was the guy that, like, anytime I could find a source of mushrooms, I'd buy like a half a pound of mushrooms, and just to like get like 60 people together
like
to
like
all
a
like trip together.
like the old school acid test, but with shrooms.
Yeah, and so psychedelics were always something that were important to me, and so I had some psychedelic jokes early on in my career, and it was something that, like, you could do like a joke, and people would be like, haha, kind of. It was more like Cheech and Chong style stuff. It was like a structure for talking about why you did some like illogical behavior, but like actually getting into exploring what psychedelics do and why they were important to me and everything was something that I didn't conceive of as being something that one could do. It was if I did more than like 5 minutes of psychedelic material even in like a 45-minute set, audiences were looking at me like I was crazy, and I am crazy, but not because I talked about psychedelics for 5 minutes. And so yeah, and I remember like my second Conan O'Brien appearance, wanting to do this adorable little mushroom joke about eating mushrooms, going into a Best Buy and unknowingly finding myself in the camcorder department and thinking I was watching a movie about me watching a movie about me. And it was this adorable little joke, and I had to fight with the FCC like tooth and nail just to do this like cute little joke. That was like 2007, so that's how far things have come along. And there's been a lot of there's been people. I think people would be really surprised to hear many of the barriers that I've bumped into just talking about the concept, including people might know me. There's a Comedy Central web series, Tales from the Trip, and even how that happened in the first place is just this like wild, crazy. Well, I might as well.
Yeah,
tell it now.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. You can't hold out on us now.
So what had happened was this animator Grant Lindahl, who he did some of the work for the specials coming out too, and we've collaborated on a few other things. I'd like to do work more with him. He was working with at Comedy Central at the time, and just kind of doing like like animating like titles and stuff like that. Nothing nothing too fulfilling, but a steady gig for an animator. And he had seen my early psychedelic tour, and he thought, what if there was a show where there was like comedians and musicians and celebrities or whatever telling psychedelic stories and then animating them. And he pitched that to Comedy Central, and they were like, no way. And this was like this is like 2017 or 18, maybe 2018 even. So this is like not that long ago. And this is what I ran into in terms of pitching things to the industry was worse. Like at the time that I was touring, but with the show. But Michael Pollan's book, it came out in like May or June of 2017, and that was a night and day difference. Once psychedelics became like legitimized and normalized, and it was in the front of bookstores, it really changed the perception of things. But people were basically all these networks. I mean, I have stories of this, so like pitching things to Showtime and everything. They're like, "Oh yeah, we want sex, drugs, and rock and roll, like Breaking Bad, hooray!" And like doing a thing with like Universal Studios where they had me host a show, just about like someone that like smoked DMT and was inspired to make these really unique cakes or whatever. So then the problem became you couldn't say something good about psychedelics. So there was a show Ari Shafir had a show, This Isn't Happening, and it was okay to have drug stories in that context because it was kind of like it was kind of the disclaimer was inherently built in. It was about something like going terribly wrong, and but the idea that psychedelics could be beneficial in your life was something that was really taboo and invited liability and everything else, and they didn't want to touch it. So Grant, he decides he just wants to shoot this thing anyway. I didn't know any of this. I just got an email from him being like, "Hey, Comedy Central's shooting a pilot." um and like I didn't know he was paying me out of his own pocket and everything. And had me come in, and it was in the Comedy Central building, and I like know Comedy Central people, and I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna stop by and say hi." And they're like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "What do you mean, what am I doing?" And it turned out he was like stealing like a little space to film without telling anyone.
That's awesome.
And we filmed a couple stories. The one is the first time I did DMT, and he animated it, put it all together, and he pitched that around to Comedy Central, and they were for their web series, and they were like, "Nope, absolutely not." And he was frustrated and kind of bored with his gig, and he decided he was going to quit and go somewhere else and like pursue this project. And he he like hacked onto their web, the Comedy Central website, and he posted that video as he was like heading out the door on like their YouTube channel, and then it ended up going viral, and they were like, "Hey, who did this? And can you make
Give this guy
more
a
of them?"
promotion.
Yeah, could you come back and
Yeah,
work for us again, please? Yeah.
What a rebel, man.
Dude, that's
yeah, yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Dude,
It
that's
was
a
really
story you
cool.
never hear about. So yeah, that, I mean, that's yeah. Got me at a loss for words on that, dude. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. That's one of those kind of like legendary stories. I didn't even know it. He didn't tell me till years after the fact. He didn't tell me until like 2022 or something that that's what had happened.
That's how you know he's a true rebel. Like he didn't come out the gate.
We'll be right back.
Hey, just a quick break. I've got some great news for the Divergent States community. We've been selected for the Zendo Project's new ambassador program. So if you've been thinking about taking their SIT course, you can use our code DivergentS10 at checkout for 10% off. That's DivergentS10 for 10% off. It helps support the show. You get a discount on a course that teaches real-world strategies for supporting your friends, and you show up for your community. Also, keep an eye out on our Psychonaut the next couple days. We'll be giving away a full ride scholarship to the SIT course. So, all right, guys, back to the episode.
Like looking for like, hey man, you should pat me on the back. I did this. Cool
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
he just
yeah.
did it because he knew that's like in his gut. He's like, I'm doing it. And then,
Yeah.
Dude, this is
and then
gonna
later
land.
he just shares this story. He's just like, oh yeah, this one time I said fuck it and just did this thing.
You know, it's really hard to do. It's really hard to do what is to pursue your genuine interest, and then it's hard to act with integrity, and we all want to like pay the bills and everything else, and it really is challenging. I mean, even to figure out, to take what the subject matter that you're interested in and to figure out how to make it entertaining is hard enough, but to actually like pursue doing something that's in line with your interests is a continuing challenge for me. And I don't even feel like I'm a like regular stand-up comedian anymore. I don't really like regular stand-up comedy that much, or at least for me performing it. There's still plenty of people I like watching.
So you feel like you want like some depth, like a focus on your conversation when you step up to the mic.
Yeah, I have this show, Stand Up Science. I was doing a bunch in 2019 before COVID, and I would it was like a mix of comedy and science. I would have two local scientists on everywhere that I went, and so the show was like 50% comedy, 50% science. And I'm kind of relaunching that, but instead of like a mixed bag of like it might be a hyena researcher and an evolutionary and then like a behavioral economist or something like that on one show, and then the next city something completely different. I am having themed ones, so this current one that I'm working on is kind of the first half of the show is me doing a stand up like a kind of science inspired philosophical comedy set about why the human brain really attaches to myths and fictions. Like I'm listening to a book by Yuval Noah Harari right now, which people might know from *Sapiens*, but it's like that. But that's kind of in the vein of the stuff that he talks about. Is an easy example of someone that I find like myself aligned with in terms of how they think. And so, taking some pretty big ideas and figuring out how can we make them fun using, Roman and Greek mythology. So, I kind of reverse engineered. I was like, I want to make something for a planetarium. Space visuals and stuff work really well, and there's plenty of that content that already exists. So what do I have to say about this subject matter? And then I have a show that I almost launched a couple of weeks ago and decided to wait till next year, which is the same. And then so that's the first half of the show. The second half of the show is a panel discussion with some local scientists that maybe talk about cognitive biases and logical fallacies and why our brains don't always perceive things accurately. and I have one about the placebo effect that I'm launching that I think is kind of will scratch some of the itch for the people that find me and they're interested in my psychedelic conversations. The placebo effect is like a really fun topic to talk about, kind of the how subjective our minds are and how subjective our perceptions are, and all these priming effects and suggestibility, and it's a really fascinating concept to me. So then I go, how do I make that funny? And usually I start, I start and I go, well, what do I actually want to say? You know, imagine the show is like building a house. I think, what do I want to say? Like, what's the concept? That's the foundation. And then what do I actually want to say? And that's like constructing the house and doing the framing. And then really I view the jokes as just kind of, you know, putting on the finish and putting the paint on. And, you know, it would look weird if it wasn't there. But it's not what like holds the thing up, you know.
Gives it personality. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that. That's a really great analogy.
Yeah, it does adds the details.
Yeah, so I'm like I can be like a deeply serious person, and I'm kind of like a deep thinker and everything, and so, you know, trying to make that work with comedy, and especially in the traditional format, is a really fun challenge, and, you know, figuring out how to get butts in the seat and find the right audience. And, you know, it's not the sort of topics that I want to like just randomly bust out on a Saturday date night show at the Chuckle Hut, you know,
Right.
and have people looking at me like, what the fuck is this guy? This guy's giving us a fucking ancient mythology lesson suddenly.
I thought this was the Chuckle House.
Yeah, yeah. And but same with psychedelics, and so psychedelics are a really big, are such a great. I'm always trying to find ways to trick people into listening to me blab about how the mind works and perception and consciousness. And psychedelics are just such a fun playground to be able to explore a lot of those ideas.
Yeah, it's a real soft entry point, I guess, to kind of to go into the deeper world of consciousness and, you know, ego and everything. It's really cool. I mean, yeah, talking about like doing your fallacies, and yeah, I can imagine it'd be tough to try and find work or find jokes around like, you know, cognitive fallacies and
I
you
mean,
know,
they're
common misconceptions.
inherently oh, sorry.
No, that's go ahead. They are inherently funny. I just hear what
It's
you're saying.
inherent. No. It's but you're right. You're right. Because so it's funny because they are inherently funny, because it's like these funny ways in which our brain misperceives things. Why it's such a tough sell, actually, especially in our modern environment, of from what I see. I've been a comedian for 21 years. I have never seen um, the level of prideful ignorance in this country as it is. It's like really peak, you know, very. You know, some of the dumbest people are the most like emboldened and entitled, and they used to kind of like bite their tongue and keep their mouth shut, but they're very emboldened now, and that can wreck a show. Um,
Yeah, they're at the height of
but
that Dunning-Kruger bell curve.
they really are.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And those are the sorts of concepts that I love talking about. So Dunning-Kruger, it's inherently funny. This is this concept that we we have this outrageous level of confidence in things that we know nothing about, and then as we learn about them, we go, "Oh shit, I don't know anything." And then you have to gain mastery through experience before you end up having the same level of confidence as when you knew nothing at all.
It is crazy. You're right. I mean, yeah, because yeah, the most competent people out there, they don't think they're like, oh shit, I don't know anything about this, and you're like, wait, what are you talking about? You've got a PhD in physics, and you know, you're all this, you Cambridge and Oxford. Why don't you know? Oh God, there's just so much out there, but it's always somebody who really has just never done it. That's like, let me tell you about quantum physics.
Oh, I know. It really is. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Being in the psychedelic space, you have to endure a lot of quantum this and
Oh
that being
God,
thrown
yes.
around with like as I watch the person struggle to calculate a tip on a bill while they're
Right.
lecturing me on the workings of quantum physics.
Yeah.
But so the idea is like part of it is what I've always liked kind of like poking the audience a little bit and antagonizing the audience. There's like two kind of different styles of antagonists, and there's the safer one. The more road hacky one is the one that goes like, "Hey, look at this guy's shirt! Isn't his shirt stupid?" And then everyone else in the room gets to laugh and goes, "Oh, my shirt's stupid," whatever. Or you go, "Hey, aren't people stupid?" And you go, both sides are crazy or whatever, and then the audience is like, oh well, glad we're all the sane ones in this room. Let's have a laugh at other people's expenses that aren't here. Where I like to confront, I like to suss out the room, figure out what I think might kind of make people a little uncomfortable to have to confront in themselves, or what they may not want to hear, and then see if I can kind of get away with explaining some of these things. So it can be a little bit intimidating to be like, here's the ways in which we're all stupid. Most audiences love being like, yeah, people are so stupid, let's laugh about how stupid people are. But that's usually like, for some silly story about something that happened at a convenience store or whatever. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh shit, everything that I thought I knew might be wrong. And
It's dangerous territory to take people to that place. So it takes a lot of courage, I'd imagine.
well, it's fun to play with the tension. A lot of comedy is like using and playing with tension as well, and so getting a chance to relieve that tension is nice. And then I also want people to understand how inclusive um, science concepts are. That really a lot of these concepts are things that it's not a capacity issue; it's a willingness thing, and anyone that actually is interested can really learn concepts like Dunning-Kruger and stuff like pretty quickly. But people might hear a term like Dunning-Kruger and go like, oh shit, am I supposed to know that? Is that some fancy science term? And it's really not that complicated, but it can sound like intimidating, and especially if we all have our varying insecurities about things. I certainly get intimidated all the time interviewing scientists. And so how do I poke people but invite them and make it approachable at the same time? It's really fun to play around with, and it's something that I'm continuing to get better at, and I honestly don't know how good I am at it. I'm scared all the time trying to put together my new show. I have a handle on my psychedelic shows. I can get on stage and deliver psychedelic material until I'm blue in the face pretty confidently. But really trying to push bigger and bigger ideas and find the audiences up for hearing them. And then when I do draw a smart audience, I'm like, fuck, these people are all smarter than me.
Shit.
And that happens too sometimes,
Right.
which is cool. I love that challenge.
Well, I feel as a comedian, you've got an easy route out. You'd be like, "What? I'm a comedian. What'd you expect?"
Yeah. You'd think so. You'd think so.
Yeah, I mean, that,
Yeah, I don't know.
I think when I look at it, I've never really thought of it, but there is really that play of tension with an audience and a comedian, how they can, yeah, kind of like push him to the edge, like almost offensive, but no, pull him back with just kind of a joke that makes it kind of relieves the tension. That there's a real
Oh
art to
yeah.
that.
Yeah, just Google listeners. Google my very first Conan set, Shane Mauss first Conan set. My opening joke is that's exactly what it is. I just go out, I intention as my debut, and I intentionally bomb for like 20 seconds just to twist things and get them back. And that relief of tension
Mm-hmm.
is a really special feeling
It kind of makes me think
as
of like
well.
flirting or something, you know?
Yeah. That's a fun metaphor, and
Yeah.
and 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 because there's a lot of different ways to do it. It's not just about So one of the things that I got sick of is like I was so good at like doing like shock value things in like an aw shucks way that I was like, that's not doing anything for me. You know, it's not that's not going to age that well. Little did I know it was going to be the thing that would like take over the world. It's
Right.
just lowbrow shock value horse shit. But but um I just thought, you know, are there other ways to create tension? And sometimes just talking about like a big subject in getting something that's a lot more depth and intentionally seeing how long I can go without trying for a laugh is like a way of like, wait, is this still a comedy show? And then finally, like, I push it as far as I can, and then, oh, okay, we're still laughing, it's still a comedy show. That's another kind of tension, and that's something that, you know, like, lots of people like Andy Kaufman and all sorts of people played around with this idea, like, wait, is this funny, is this supposed to, and then you kind of have that twist and kind of makes everything all right.
I was gonna
Well,
say
with
that.
those
Go ahead.
themes, sorry, I've got to say this. Um, with those theme concepts, I've got to be honest with you. Like as I watched your special, the Psychonauts, I thought a lot about like George Carlin because it was very similar when I remember I first came into George Carlin myself and watching him. I saw a lot of his older stuff before I saw like I'm sorry, a lot of his newer stuff before his older stuff. So
Yeah,
before he goes on about like the coke or like putting junk in the box or whatever,
yeah,
um, like you catch his older shows where he's like way more political and it almost becomes like a speech that's like sprinkled with comedy in a way. But there was
right,
a very
right,
specific focus to the conversation, and I really caught that vibe from your
yeah.
documentary. And then as you're talking about it, just that's where my mind keeps going. Is like that reminds me so much of George Carlin.
Yeah, well, thanks. I mean, that's something that's very much worthwhile to aspire for me as someone that could explore like really big ideas. I shy away from politics, but you know we all have our various strengths and weaknesses, and I don't really consider myself to be anything special in the political commentary department, and I don't watch news or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, maybe like maybe like I aspire to be like a biologist, biology's George Carlin or something
Yeah.
like that, you know. And because of some of the concepts that I'm doing, it's inherently you know, I'm also playing with, well, where's the edge? Because, you know, people want like a edginess to it as well. So it's not just, you know, like too cutesy either sometimes when we're like, oh, we're all learning together. So it's constantly trying to feel like, is the vibe right? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you said it feels like that. That's kind of that art of stand up a little bit. Is creating that tension, and yeah, kind of reminded me of, I guess, cringe humor. It's been real big lately too, which is
Mm.
just building that tension up the whole time, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's kind of crazy.
Oh my God! I just watched The Chair Company, Tim
Oh
Robbins.
yeah, that's what
Like,
I was
and
thinking
it's
of. Is
like,
Tim
oh
Robbins,
my God! Like sometimes I'm like, I can't stop watching. This
right?
is definitely high art, and at the same time, I'm like, I gotta stop this. Like mid episode, I'll be like, oh, I gotta pause this and like walk away for a little while
Yeah,
and take a reset. This is this is why it's high art, is because it creates these feelings
Yeah.
that like I've never experienced watching a
yeah,
television show before.
Yeah.
Nathan Fielder as well, like just this, oh my God, masterfully awkward
yeah,
genius, a masterfully awkward genius, you know,
yeah.
that of course this isn't for everybody. I don't even know if it's for me half the time when I'm watching it, and still I'm like, well, this is special. You know,
Right.
this is really something.
It yeah, it blows me away how it came about. I remember, you talking about Comedy Central coming up, but and like the mid 2000s. But yeah, that's I still remember seeing those the tales from the trip and just being like, "Holy shit, that's awesome! People are coming." I mean, even Oprah came out recently and did like a whole thing with Michael Pollan. It's just like,
Yeah.
holy shit! Now Oprah's into psychedelics.
She's like, you get
Yeah.
acid, you get acid.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Such an easy
You
joke.
know what? Some of my solid one though. We would there would be an absence if you hadn't done it.
Right.
It's like, I thought he was going to make the Oprah joke and he didn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where the fuck was the Oprah joke? It's right there in front of you.
Right.
It's like you have to. I have a thing about, like, I met someone that one like this mushroom cup submitted his um his mushrooms for this mushroom cup in Denver, and his mushrooms won first and second place for potency. And I was
yeah.
like, that's the fucking mushroom people are so much fun. It's like, that's an easy joke, but solid, first and second place. And, but yeah, and then speaking of like being genuine too, then this is a new awkward moment in psychedelic history where it's getting like normalized. Sometimes it's like losing a little bit of its edge because like now Oprah's doing it or whatever, and there's not as much of the black market. You can go into a head shop and get things, and
It's such a
they're
weird
decriminalized.
moment. It really
It
is.
is.
Like,
And so then there's all these like wellness influencers
oh
and
god,
things
yeah.
that are like latching on to the modern enthusiasm and like peddling all sorts of nonsense to people. And it's like, well, that's kind of it came along with trying to get things legitimized, but now it made psychedelics like a little bit lame,
Yeah.
and shady in a new way.
Right.
They used to be shady because you'd have to go to like an acid dealer's house and like pet his iguana or whatever,
Listen
and
to
you
the
weren't
Grateful
sure if
Dead
you
for
were
half an hour
getting ripped
before.
off. It was shady in that way. And now it's like, I don't know about this vitamin this person's trying to
Yeah.
sell me just because they microdose sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those. It's one of those inevitable things, I guess, with the capitalization of any commodity. I guess is the ones that really bother me personally are like spiritual bypassers. That's
Oh yeah.
such a huge problem in the psychedelic industry. Is they dress up problems in spiritual language and just kind of, oh well, and then I mean, there's no comeback to that if they're just like, oh, it's my auras and chakras were misaligned, and Mercury
Well,
was, and you're like, well, what, I don't have anything for that, I can't
it's
help
no
you with it.
it's no surprise that after 10 years in the psychedelic community, I'm making a show called Stand Up Science about myth understandings and why we gravitate to those stories. And then I have another show about the placebo effect. That's no accident. And
it's
part of it
it's
has been some of my frustration with some of the community, and trying to strike a balance of like, when is sometimes people need like a little validation, a little self-esteem. Other times people don't really need to be validating their own bullshit to themselves and
it's
creating
true.
like a bigger ego and
Right.
yeah, everything else. And yeah, it's hard to figure out as a whole because it's such a case by case basis. Who needs what message has never been harder to figure out within the psychedelic space. It's become very diverse in that way, which is, I mean, it's just kind of is what it is. It's made me lose interest in the topic. I'll tell you that much. But I still like so much believe in psychedelics, and I just had an amazing psychedelic experience recently that was like everything that I needed when I needed it most, when I was like really hitting like in a bad place, and so and these some of these experiences are so outrageously like interesting and fascinating, and I'm so happy that so many more people get to experience this. And so I just kind of like go back and forth with how I feel about the space at any given moment.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's rough out here for skeptical psychonauts. Like,
Oh my God.
you know,
Thank you for saying that. Like, I never know what I'm walking into. And hearing you say that, I was like, oh, thank God. Okay. Because, like,
yeah,
peace and love to everyone, but I also know that the people with the peace and love bullshit on their social media profiles are the ones that show up in my DMs, like harassing me
hmm,
because I accusing me of, like, you work for big pharma, because I happen to, like, interview virologists and epidemiologists sometimes, and like
yeah,
people that actually know how reality works, and
right,
but because you fucking got your little fantasy conspirituality from your silly like a YouTube video or 4chan or whatever stupid
Right.
stuff is out there.
yeah,
Well,
It's
dude,
like,
you said something in your special that like really fucking stood out to me, and I like immediately connected when you said it. But you were talking about people with the ego death, and like you're like, oh wow, it seems like your ego's
I
still
forgot about
pretty
that,
fucking
Chuck.
much alive, and like
Yeah,
that's how
yeah.
I've
Why are you
always
bragging about
felt.
your ego death? Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
When I heard you say that, I was like, I almost had this moment where, like, I stood up out of my chair. I was like, fucking thank you. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how much to lean into that, I kind of I have this idea. I kind of want to do a bad trip show too. I kind of and I it's just that the psychedelic community is still small enough that, like, I don't know. I'm not necessarily out there looking to dedicate a lot of time to, like, shitting on people,
right,
especially because, like, a lot of, just because I'm not a spiritual person, I have a lot of respect for the things that get people out of bed in the morning, as I know I can't most mornings. Um, and so, I go back and forth with that, but goddamn, there's some silly and dangerous stuff happening out there. And I think some of the ratcheting it up of, like, wanting to be cool, of like, okay, well, we've already heard about all those boring traditional psychedelics, so now everyone needs to do ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT, and someone chokes on their own fucking tongue because like it did way too much of the world's most powerful psychedelic. It's like, I don't know. Yeah, like, I
yeah.
go back and forth with this stuff a lot. But it's also part of what makes the space so interesting and so complex, and makes it so interesting to talk about. And then I go to, like, I have like a psychedelic conference that I'm going to in January. That's like, a science conference, and in San Diego, and it is like more harder science. And I just end up, I do my psychedelic shows, online. I'll have, like, psychedelic, like, lunatics reach out to me, and I'll get, like, very concerned. I'm like, I can't have. There's only so many messages that I can get from dudes like, "You're the only one who can understand the psychotic break that I'm going through right now," and then, like, having these fucking stand moments because I don't write them back, and they're like, clearly unwell. Sometimes I get an apology later, being like, "Just got out of a psych ward. Sorry about that."
Sorry, I was
But
tripping balls when I texted you that.
I see enough of the stuff that other people don't generally see, that it gives me pause, and, like, how much I want to promote some of these things sometimes. And then I have these shows and I meet these people afterwards, and just like, oh man, it's just like such wonderful people. And
Mhm.
even if I don't see eye to eye, it's like, a lot of very thoughtful people, cool guys. I tend to end up like, dating woo ladies. There's like this certain, like, compatibility or something. It's like, I used to always have these great conversations with Pete Holmes and Duncan Trussell, and Duncan's like this very mystical weirdo that deviates a bit too much into the conspiratorial lens for me, but it's part of why we had such good conversations. And
Yeah.
same with like, Pete Holmes is a Christian, and, like, the shit that, like, damaged my childhood and left me, like, traumatized. I was raised Catholic, and I can get fired up about organized religion sometimes, but it also ends up leading to these like really fantastic constructive conversations.
Oh, 100%. Like when you're having a conversation with somebody that like you share like maybe 70% common ground, but you have that 30% that you don't. That
The brain is
100%.
hyper tuned to
Yeah.
the differences. Do you know that humans are the most like one of the most homogeneous species on Earth? They are like, outside of like ants or something like that. But there's like there's more genetic diversity in like one tribe of chimps, like 50 chimps or whatever. There's more genetic diversity in that one tribe of chimps than there is the whole of 8 billion people on Earth. That's
That's
how
fucking
similar
crazy.
we actually are. And it's we have these categorizations of things in our mind, and the way that we can kind of hyper focus on what's different. This is one of the things I think psychedelics can be really useful, because part of the reason why we have these categorizations is because early in development, we're just like a wash of information. It's not a blank slate, because we have these evolved features that lead to all these different propensities to constructing perceptions in various ways. It's not necessarily deterministic, but it's kind of, there's these statistical probabilities, and in the early maturation of the brain in the first few years, there's heavy amounts of synaptic pruning, which is where there's neural kind of death initiated between categories in the brain. So you go, this is a shape and this is a color, and
Mhm.
so and you can create different categories, and then that makes things so much easier to understand and to process, because you have these things organized, this perception organized a bit more. But then, first off, humans are living much longer than they used to.
Mhm.
um, it, Depending on how you think about it, another 45 years longer than you used to. But that's 50% of people used to not make it into adulthood. But if you
Right.
factor in adulthood, they'd make it to about 50 or something like that. Now we're making it to about 75. And so we suddenly, there comes a time in our life where we don't need such hyper categorization, and our brain could actually tolerate a little bit more ambiguity in terms of how we think about differing categories. And this is something that I think things like mushrooms and LSD might really show a lot of potential, and that this is why we experience these synesthetic states where you see like music as color or whatever while you're tripping, is because it's creating crosstalk within these regions that don't normally um, kind of talk to one another. And that may be really useful, and this might be why it seems that there's an increase in openness that comes along um, with psychedelic experiences. And but then there's this whole other like crunchy to conservative pipeline that's like weird, that and
When I
troubling
first,
too. So
yeah,
so
when
it's
I
like
first saw
sometimes
that coming,
you can get so open that you go all the way back around,
I'm so
yeah,
open, I'm closed now, man.
yeah.
yeah, I've heard that was probably the weirdest one, because anytime coming up, it was, we'd see like the anti-vax and the granola hippies. They were
Yeah,
that was them. They were the anti-vax. They were
absolutely.
and then all of
Right.
a sudden, at some point, all these, the other side was like, oh yeah, yeah, we don't like those either. And I was like, what were you
Yeah,
guys?
yeah.
Yeah,
It was,
there's a weird pipeline. To be honest though, when I was early, I almost fell into that libertarian kind of pipeline.
yeah.
So I
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so that people have, questions about
mhm.
authorities and big pharma and that sort of thing. But it's also like, the same thing applies to big wellness and influencers
I think
and
it was Rand Paul back in the day, back when Rand
y-
Paul ran for
y-
president and started
yeah.
talking about all that and be like, oh, what? And then, yeah, you come out of it, finally, eventually look back and I was like, wow, holy shit. Can't believe I thought some of that shit. But
Well, I think a lot of it matches our evolved intuition, and we have this. I think one of the problems, and this is another thing where the plasticity from psychedelics could potentially be beneficial. I'm not going to say necessary, but like really beneficial for people in that the level of change that humans are experiencing in a lifetime now, there's just never been any. I'm sure it's always felt like this is the most change that's always happened, and it probably was because change has been ratcheting up, since agriculture and since cities and things. The technologies have just advanced further, but before that, in within a hunter gatherer tribe, I mean, these are like, inventive, intelligent people having to navigate various environments, but you're still talking about, like having a more symmetrical bowl, like you'd be like,
right,
oh, when I was young, our bowls used to be all lopsided, and now they're so much more symmetrical than they used to be. Like that was the kind of change from a technological standpoint that people were experiencing. And now, I mean, just in my lifetime, the popularization of computers, internet, now AI, uh,
I was gonna say our generation, like we went from like analog drinking out of the water hose outside and not
yeah.
having, to beepers and pagers and now everything, your refrigerator is connected. So yeah, it's just the whole thing. It is weird. And we have more access to information now more than ever. Like I think
Abs-
that's a huge thing. Like just to have access at all. I mean, and it is kind of ironic where to see we're talking about like Dunning-Kruger, we have access now to all this information. It's just if you
yeah.
actually choose to go and look into it now. Like it's there.
Well, there's also speaking of access to information and Dunning-Kruger. So to take some of these ideas further, there's a lot of research around the illusion of explanatory depth, which is the same sort of thing as like if you ask someone how much they know about, like, hey, do you know how a toilet works? And you're like, oh, sure, I can push a lever and it goes. But yeah, but do you know like the physics of how it is? Like, of course, there's no one knows how a toilet works actually, but it intuitively feels as if you do. You're catching. You're right. You're back just in time.
Right. Yeah. I was just
So
noting that. I was like, man, what a great point to come in on.
so so our social brains evolved to take in, to assess the amount, to assess information that we don't have in our brains but we know that others within our group might have. So this is part of how we were able to do well in, as social apes and tribes, is you could go like, well, I don't have that knowledge, but someone else has this specialty, so I can ask them. But because of that, the brain conflates the ability to access information with already having it. And so, like one of my favorite studies about this, they go, they give one group of people this story. They go, scientists have discovered this, um, new rock with like bioluminescent qualities. They've learned everything there is to know about this rock. How much do you understand about this rock? And people are like, well, yeah, I think I got a handle on how this rock, this thing, that's this made up thing that they just heard about. And then there's another condition where they go, scientists have discovered this rock with its bioluminescent qualities or whatever, and they've learned everything about it, but it's confidential. How much do you know? And people are like, what do you mean I don't know anything about it? It's confidential. I don't have access to that information. So our brains are mistaking an ability to gather information with already having it, because that worked well within our social bands. And now we have a phone in our pocket that has the entirety of human knowledge cataloged. and so that's probably making us presume that we know a lot more than we used to. The other big problem that I think that this is another thing that neural flexibility um, can work on is that, and this is something that would be prime for the psychedelic community that's all into the, like, oh, like old sacred things, this and that. I wish I could get people to appreciate that the humans have had the ability to, especially in writing, to have these cultural transmissions that can disperse information further and faster and more readily, and it's given rise to all of these uh, all of these new discoveries, and discoveries are typically counterintuitive. Otherwise we'd already know it, if it was intuitive. And so you discover that, say, actually the earth isn't flat and the center of the universe, earth is round and like spinning at 44,000 miles an hour or whatever, and we're going around a sun, and this is just one of many galaxies. That's not intuitive, but we know it now. So it's we are, like, you go, well, flat earthers, these people are crazy, and they're only crazy in that they're in their like refusal to accept information and evidence. But intuitively, the earth is flat. We're the only species that's ever discovered that the earth isn't flat. If you Dr. Doolittled any species on earth, they'd think that it was flat. And this didn't matter when we first discovered that the earth isn't flat, but now we have satellites and things that need to be managed that's dependent on this information. So if we all had amnesia and lost all this information, no one would be able to manage these satellites and everything else. And so we are becoming increasingly dependent on all these counterintuitive ideas. We have all these cultural transmissions. The things that we teach fifth graders, the things that we teach kids that are 10 years old, are things that, like, the greatest minds discovered like 1,000 years ago and then bickered over for hundreds of years
Mm-hmm.
before they figured out, like, linear graphs can be useful. That was like Descartes, actually, who's known for, I think therefore I am, which is a nonsense thing, but he's known for that, and not like his advancements within math. And that's just something you teach to a 10-year-old in like one day, and then test them on that and expect them to know that. And then you go long enough without being exposed to this information, or not knowing the reason for knowing it or whatever else. And then as an adult you go like, well, I'm not going to learn, like, I'm not going to teach myself algebra because that's like, I should already know that. 10-year-olds are knowing that. Like, no, these are actually very, very sophisticated ideas that took humans a long time to put together. And it's like I'm reading The Origin of Species by Darwin right now, just because I'm a big evolutionary guy, but I like to read like what the current stuff is to know, so I don't like get stuck thinking like a wrong thing with the mistakes along the way. And Darwin was a genius and made all these counterintuitive discoveries, and I'm reading it and it's like, oh, I could tell Darwin so many things. I could teach him so much, even though he's such a smarter man
His mind
than
would be
I am.
blown by like endogenous retroviruses. Like
Oh,
he would be like,
absolutely.
"What?" But yeah,
Even at the time, Mendel had studies on peas that would have given him the mechanism for heritability that would have
right.
helped him so much as he was struggling with it. But he was a monk, and that information wasn't accessed. And so now people can readily understand, like, wrap their heads around, like the theory of relativity is not that hard of a concept to learn and take in. And people can take a physics class and know that idea, and maybe even some more sophisticated ones now. And we've now built a world that is dependent on that knowledge, but none of it matches our intuition. So we probably do have this kind of like uncanny valley-ish. Everything doesn't quite feel right. Everything we make is kind of like creating like uh, a user friendly world. So we construct a world that matches our intuition, but it's built off of all these counterintuitive discoveries. And so then, when, say, no mammal on earth has ever wanted to like get punctured by something, but now getting punctured by something is something that can help prevent a life-threatening illness for you and your community. This is this counterintuitive thing that you have to go to, and makes it that much easier for any conspiracy people or anyone or politicians. All they have to do is think, well, what is intuitive that doesn't match what we know about reality,
Yeah.
and then just pander to people based on their intuitions.
Yeah, we really got to watch out for that, especially, like with, as we're saying, with this day and age of this information being at our fingertips, that's the downside to it. So,
Yeah.
But
So
we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna listen to some more music. We're gonna be right back. You guys are here on Patreon. You guys come join on Patreon. You'll hear the rest of the conversation. The rest of you guys will catch you next episode.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for being with us. All right, guys, welcome back. That was our conversation with Shane Mauss. I really kind of felt like calling that one the skeptical psychonaut.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah, as I was kicking around a name for it, I think I figured one out, but I really like that. It's kind of got a ring to it.
Right.
But yeah, before we wrap this one up, I just want to say something about why these conversations matter. A lot of psychedelic culture gets caught between these two extremes. On one side, everything is mystical and unquestionable, and on the other, everything becomes clinical and detached. What I'm trying to build here is a third space, a place where you can go deep, have big experiences, and still stay grounded on how the mind actually works. That's what this conversation with Shane really was. It's not about cosmic answers or secret truths, but about how psychedelics change the way we think, the way we make meaning, and the way we relate to ourselves and each other. So if you guys found this valuable, the way this show exists is through people who support it directly. Patreon listeners get full extended cuts, bonus conversations, and early access to everything we do. You're not just supporting a podcast, you're supporting a harm reduction space that stays independent and doesn't answer to sponsors or algorithms. You can find that at patreon.com/divergent states. If you're going to be exploring altered states, one of the most important things you can do is reduce risk. That's why we partner with the Zendo Project. They train psychedelic peer support volunteers and help people through difficult experiences without judgment. If you want to support that work and take their training, you can use our code to get a discount and help fund scholarships at the same time. The link and code are in the show notes. Brian, before we close, is there anything you want to add?
I think you covered everything, man. We really appreciate everybody that's here. Even if you're listening for free, just remember you can always support us by dropping a like, a comment, wherever you're seeing it.
Right, give us a rating. Yeah, leave us a review, give us a rating on Spotify or Apple, wherever you're listening at. And as always, thank you for being here, listening with curiosity, and being part of this community that believes you can go deep without losing your mind. We'll see you next time on Divergent States. Psychedelics can take you deep, but you don't have to go at it alone. Fireside Project is your trusted companion on the psychedelic path. If you're having a tough trip, their free anonymous support line is just a call or text away at 62-FIRESIDE. Planning a journey? Fireside certified coaches offer personalized video sessions to help you prepare and integrate, starting with a free 20-minute consult. Whether you're on the path, in the middle of it, or just getting started, Fireside is here for you. Learn more at firesideproject.org.